Well, we are just 3 days away from Selection Sunday. We are excited to be doing this last bracketology before we have the real brackets on Sunday. And we're super excited because there will be a lot more content coming your way on our channel.
Definitely, man. March is by far the best month of the year. We missed the tourney last year, and we're so thankful to have it back, man. So this content's going to be great. If you like our channel, whether it's your first video you're watching or you've been around, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well so you can see our new videos coming up because they are going to be some good ones.
Yeah, and we're going to be giving our takes kind of on what this bracket looks like, how we might see this playing out. Also, go down and comment and let us know your thoughts. And we look at that. You know, if you have a suggestion or maybe a stat that you found, let us know. We'll mention it in one of these videos as well. But let's dive into it. Joel Lenardi's, who we always use from ESPN, he's really the bracketology guy.
Definitely.
And we look at his bracket, and I'll tell you what, as we've been going through this, I think this is our fourth bracketology video. The last month of the season, we wanted to kind of watch this as it developed. I think this is the best bracket so far for the Zags in terms of how it lays out.
Definitely. No, we've seen a lot of changes go through. Of course, this is what happens in bracketology. They're going to change each week. We know some people, really don't look at it until Selection Sunday, but for us, it's a great opportunity to break down different matchups and different teams, and some of these are probably going to happen in the Zags bracket. So you look at the way this one worked out, though. And we've got some teams, a few teams that are on the rise and playing hot, but we've also got some teams in here that haven't played so hot recently.
Yeah, and we know there's a lot of movement this time of year, a lot of games going on. I mean, heck, if you're a college basketball fan, this championship week with all the different tournaments going on, there's been a lot of great basketball to this point. It feels like Friday when we're filming this, we're just entering a fun weekend, and there's going to be a lot of movement in seed lines, and because of the conference affiliations in terms of what bracket teams are in. So in this bracket, Zags are the number one overall seed. At this point, you have to assume the Zags have locked up that number one overall seed. They would play the winner of Mount St. Mary's and Norfolk State in that 1 versus 16 matchup. Just a reminder, if you didn't see our last bracketology video, that would be a play-in game that is going to take place on Thursday between those 16 seeds. So if the Zags are the number one overall seed, tournament starts on Friday. Zags would not be playing till Saturday, March 20th. So we do know that. Looking forward to that second round matchup. What a weird second round matchup it could be, as you're going to have the 8 seed in North Carolina in this projected matchup taking on the 9 seed in UConn. And, I think most people right away are going to that North Carolina Gonzaga rematch. Looking at these two teams, North Carolina is 18-9 on the season. They just beat Virginia Tech 81-79 or 81-73 in the ACC quarterfinals last night. That's only their second ranked win of the season, as Virginia Tech, I think, is ranked 23rd right now. They also beat Florida State earlier in the year. So they do have a rematch tonight versus Florida State in the ACC semis. But here's the thing with North Carolina is they don't really have a star. They have a balanced, deep rotation. They don't really shoot the ball great from three, shooting 34% on the season, or 31% on the season. And so you've got a North Carolina team that at one point this season, many people didn't think would even be in the tournament.
Yeah.
It looks like they will be. Roy Williams, the Hall of Fame coach, has got them playing well. But then they take on a UConn team, which they just beat DePaul in the Big East quarters. They take on Creighton in the semis tonight. They do not have a win over a ranked opponent. Really on their team, you look at James Bouknight, who's averaging 19.4 a game. Another team that doesn't shoot the ball well from three. And if we learned anything from that BYU game, it's the way you beat this Gonzaga team is shooting the ball well from three consistently for two halves. And I don't think either of these two teams is going to be the team to do that.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to run with Gonzaga if you're not able to hurt them from outside. Of course, the BYU game was a tale of two halves for BYU. They were absolutely lights out in the first half. Shot, I think it was 68% from the field and from three in that first half. And that was on high volume from three as well. But of course, second half, they shot 3 of 13. So it shows you right away that you don't necessarily have to shoot 70% from three, I think. but you do have to be able to shoot in both halves for a full 40 minutes, and that's a tough task for either of these teams. Looking at it in this matchup, anytime we've talked about it, 8-9s are always a toss-up, but for me, I look at UNC's playing well.
Yep.
And Roy Williams. Roy Williams is your X factor in that. He's a Hall of Fame coach, and for me, I think they're going to come out of that matchup. It's going to be a battle, I think, regardless. Neither of those teams are set up to really blow out the other one. So barring any health issues, things like that, I do think North Carolina sneaks out of that matchup.
Yeah, and they play, honestly, in the tougher conference schedule in the ACC.
Yep.
And so both of us have North Carolina over UConn in that first-round matchup to meet up with the Zags in the round of 32. And then we look forward to that Sweet 16 matchup. We go down the bracket a little bit. You've got Creighton taking on Toledo. I think Creighton is very vulnerable. I mean, that 5-12 matchup is always a matchup that we see upsets in. I'm not saying Toledo's going to be the one to do it, but don't be surprised if Creighton makes an early exit from the tournament. And Purdue is a team on that 4 line I think is very underseeded right now. They actually take on Ohio State tonight, who we'll talk about later in this video because they are in the Zags bracket as well. But Ohio State's on that 2 line. If Purdue beats Ohio State, we might see kind of a flip-flop there where Purdue could end up as a 2 or 3 seed. And so I think that Purdue's a team that really, if they end up meeting Creighton in that round of 32 matchup, I've got Purdue. They're a team that's played in the Big Ten, played well. They take on, like we said, Ohio State in the Big Ten semis. They've beat Ohio State in both matchups to this point, so they're trying to go for the 3 clean sweep. They've won 5 straight as well in the tough Big Ten. Really, their last bad loss was to Michigan, a team a lot of people think can make a Final Four run in January. They lost to one by 17. Trevon Williams is averaging 15 points per game for Purdue, but they don't shoot a lot from 3. They're only 3-point shooters, kind of a sniper. He's only averaging 9 points per game on the season. And then going back to look at Creighton, they beat Butler last night in the Big East quarterfinals. They take on UConn, who we just talked about in the Big East semis tonight on Friday. Their only ranked wins on the season are versus Villanova and UConn in conference play. And this is a team that they're going through some issues as a program off the court. Distractions are not a good thing this time of year. They just lost a 4-star recruit because of it. So I think there's a lot of different things going on in that Creighton program. And so if you get that Creighton-Purdue matchup, do you agree that you're expecting Purdue to come out of that?
Yeah, I think Purdue comes out of that largely in part due to the off-court issues that Creighton is dealing with. We know they're pulling together as a team right now, but we know things aren't perfect on that end. In Creighton, they are a team that can get hot. Balak, one of their guards for them, is one of the best shooters in college basketball. I think he's taken about 185 threes on the season at 41%, and he's a guy as well that has logo range. One of the few shooters in college that you really have to guard as soon as they cross half court, and the type of player that if they get hot, they can change a game in March Madness. That being said, I think Purdue is a little bit more battle-tested of a team, and I think coming out of the Big Ten tournament as well, they're going to be ready for this. They're just more balanced to me, and so I do agree. I think Purdue comes out of that matchup.
Yeah, so right now we are planning on, if the bracket shook out this way, which it won't, there will be movement between now and Sunday. Gonzaga would be taking on North Carolina in the round of 32, and then we're both projecting a Purdue matchup in the Sweet 16. Not an easy Sweet 16 matchup by any sort of the imagination. And then we go forward to essentially who they'd be playing in the Elite Eight. We look at the bottom of this region. You have number 6 Tennessee, number 3 Oklahoma State. A month ago, we were talking about a number 9 Oklahoma State seed in terms of maybe playing them in the second round, and we both said that is not a second round matchup you want to see. Since then, Oklahoma State's won 8 of 10. We all know about Cade Cunningham. He's had some problems staying healthy, but this is a team that could make a deep run. They've moved up to that 3 line. Would be playing in this bracket the number 14 seed Grand Canyon, who we've talked about on the show. Got Tommy Lloyd's son, Liam Lloyd, playing down for Grand Canyon.
That's right.
So that'd be a fun first-round matchup, and a team that whoever sees Grand Canyon, that is a potential upset. Look out for that, depending on who they get seeded against.
Definitely.
And then in the bottom half of that, you've got BYU playing VCU in the first round and Ohio State and Drexel. And you mentioned it off air. We obviously saw how well BYU played against the Zags recently. Don't be surprised if this BYU team shocks a few people and makes a Sweet 16 run.
Yeah, I think it's possible. They're a very well-coached team. I think they're massively underrated in the sense that the WCC, of course, we know it. It's not new to us. The WCC catches a lot of flack and kind of throughout the national media and through national fan bases. But anybody who's actually doing these polls and really diving in knows that BYU is a solid team. Are they going to shoot 70% against somebody in the tournament? Probably not. But they are capable of shooting well. And we've talked about it so many times off air and everything. In March Madness, these streaky three-point teams are the ones that can just go crazy and pull off these upsets. There are also teams that can lose in the first round because if you go ice cold, that's all you have. But if they come out and they play hot, this is a team that's going to cause issues. So, I think BYU does come out of the VCU matchup. They're going to drop, that 2 seed at this point in the second round. And if you're a 2 seed drawing BYU, you're getting, 2 days turnaround to prep for that game. And you got to be ready for that. That's a team, if you come out flat, they showed they will jump on top of you. And then you're trying to crawl back. And not every team has those, those stars that can come out at halftime and just take over a game like Gonzaga did. And so that is definitely a matchup that I'm watching. We're going to talk again once the final bracket comes out, and they are a team I'm definitely going to be looking at and considering a possible upset for sure.
If BYU plays the way they did against Gonzaga, against a team like Ohio State, that's probably a game they come out on top. Now, They're not going to shoot 75%, most halves. But we know this team is capable and, like you said, a very well-coached team. So you've got Tennessee and Louisville as a 6-11 matchup. I've got Tennessee really coming out of that. I don't think really it matters who wins that game. I think Oklahoma State is coming out of that pod. And then let's just assume that Ohio State takes care of business and you have an Oklahoma State-Ohio State Sweet 16 matchup. Again, just a quick reminder on these two teams. OK State won 8 of their last 10 games. They beat West Virginia in back-to-back games.
Yeah,
a West Virginia team that really has Final Four aspirations. You knock them out early in the Big 12 tournament. Let's not forget about West Virginia when the tournament comes around, but it tells you how well Oklahoma State is playing. They take on Baylor tonight in the Big 12 semis. Baylor has been really the one team that, as well as Oklahoma State has played all year, they have not been able to contain. Their closest game was 13 the last time they played. So they have not been within double digits of Baylor. And I think this Oklahoma State team, it's a nice team. They're a tournament team, a good team.
Definitely.
But we know Baylor is that tier 1 team along with Gonzaga and Michigan and Illinois that if you can't, you don't have to necessarily beat them, but if you can't stay within 10 points, I don't know how serious we can take this Oklahoma State team in terms of making a Final Four run. Mm-hmm. And so while I don't want to play Oklahoma State in the round of 32, if that ends up being your Elite Eight matchup, I think things could shake out a lot worse for the Zags. We all know how good Cade Cunningham is. This kid could be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. And same with Jalen Suggs. Both these guys, there's a reason they're going to be stars in the NBA is when the lights come on, these dudes shine. I don't want to play a team that has a guy like Jalen Suggs or Cade Cunningham. They're also a team that goes 10 deep in terms of their rotation. They got dudes who can rebound. The one thing in that BYU-Gonzaga game that I was very concerned about, and I would put a little caution out there for Zag fans, is we know that Mark Few, when things get tight, tends to really shorten his bench and shorten his rotation. And in that BYU game, we saw that rotation go down to 7 guys. Anton Watson and Aaron Cook were the only 2 guys coming off of the bench. And to do that against a BYU team that almost every single scholarship player you have would start on BYU, it concerns me to see him going to a short of a rotation so early. Like, I get it. You're down 14. once we get to the tournament and you run into an Oklahoma State team that has a solid 10 that maybe can go on more of a quick rotation, sub in, sub out, like we've seen teams like Florida State do, that's a big concern for me in terms of a matchup that the Zags could run into a team like Oklahoma State.
Yeah, we've seen it. Obviously you mentioned the Florida State game, and that's when it pops up right away because that lineup, what he rolled out was so short. I mean, it was asking so much of the guys that were on the floor all the time. So it is something to be concerned about. I don't think, obviously, anybody expected that BYU game to go the way that it went. I know Few and Corey Kispert, Suggs, that everyone said that, they needed this game. They needed to get punched in the mouth a little bit to see how they would respond in that situation. And it seems like Mark Few used it as an opportunity to kind of treat it as a tournament game. Say, okay, if we get in this situation, these are the guys we need to rely on. That being said, we talked about it, though, and it's tough because now you're going into a tournament where guys like Julian Strother, Omar Balu, they are going to probably need to play some minutes at some point.
Dom Harris need
to play some minutes, and they have not played now it'll be a few weeks by the time we get to the tournament here. So that's something that they're going to have to play. Obviously, I think if Gonzaga is in control of the game, Few's going to use his bench more, for sure.
Hopefully in that 16 matchup.
Yeah, you really hope so. But it is something as well. I mean, I agree. I would keep an eye on that. If we run into a deep athletic team that focuses on wearing down the Zags, that can be an issue, and I think the Zags' way to offset that is to put some guys in foul trouble and take away that luxury from these teams. And I think this Gonzaga team is better suited for that than teams in the past. You've got guards who can attack the rim, Jalen Suggs and Corey Kispert. You've got an incredibly crafty guards in Ayai and Nemhard who move well off the ball and just do a good job of putting players in positions to be successful out there. But that's something that you're going to have to deal with. If a team is running deeper than you, you have to figure out a way to offset that. And it's usually not by just more energy. So that's something for sure I'm keeping an eye on. And it can definitely be a game changer come March Madness.
Let's break down the number 2 seed in this region. That would be Ohio State. They're 19-8 on the season. Just like a month ago when we were talking about Oklahoma State not wanting to play them as a 9 seed, and they've played really well. When we did our first bracketology video, we said, if there's a team I don't want to play right now, it's Ohio State, because they were coming off of...
They were hot.
They were super hot. They were coming off wins over Illinois, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Yeah. And the last month's been very hard on Ohio State.
Yeah.
They lost 4 straight. They lost to Michigan. Michigan State lost by 16 to Iowa.
Scored 57 in that game.
And then they lost to Illinois, and they almost lost last night to Minnesota, snuck by 4 points in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. And so they are really... It seems like they may have peaked a month ago. They are not playing their best ball going into the NCAA tournament. I do believe if they lose to Purdue tonight, they're going to fall off of that 2 line. And so if the tournament shook out to this seeding, we've both agreed this is the best setup we've seen so far for the Zags.
Yeah.
But in terms of what we would expect to happen, let's just say Ohio State comes out of that, beats BYU in their second game, and you run into that Ohio State-Oklahoma State matchup. Simply, you've got a star in Cade Cunningham in Oklahoma State, and you've got a team that's playing really good ball. I think both of us currently have Oklahoma State winning that matchup. And so if the bracket shook out the way Joe Lunardi has it the Friday before Selection Sunday, Zags would take on North Carolina in the round of 32 after that 16 matchup. They would then take on, in the Sweet 16, Purdue, and then we see them taking on Oklahoma State in that Elite 8 matchup. And as we said a little bit before, Oklahoma State's a great team, but if that's your Elite 8 matchup versus teams like Illinois or Michigan or other teams that could potentially fall on that 2 line if something happens, that's a good scenario for the Zags. Looking over to the other regions real quick, Illinois is the 1 seed that we would potentially run into in the Final Four. The 2 seed in that region is Alabama. Both super good teams. On the other side of the bracket, you've got Baylor and Iowa as the 1-2 seed in Region 2. And then in Region 3, you've got Michigan as the 1 seed and Houston as the 2 seed. Another 2 seed, I know we're not afraid of Iowa because we beat them already, but I'll tell you what, Iowa's a lot better team than I think honestly, Ohio State or Houston. And so it'll be interesting to see who ends up on that 2 line for the Zags.
Yeah, there's going to be some movement for sure in there. Obviously, I think Iowa's playing better now than they were. I think the Zags are also going to be playing better come that matchup late in the tournament as well. But it's one of those teams where exactly what we've talked about. You have to be able to shoot to beat Gonzaga, and that's a team, obviously, that we know can shoot the lights out. Gonzaga did a very good job in the first matchup of running them off the line, and I think making them just play faster in general than they wanted to. What I really look at in that between those two teams, though, is it really comes down to the defense of the guards on Iowa. If they can play well, that's a team that can secure that 2 line and really make a deep run.
This is a guy who earlier in the season when the Zags played Iowa went as far to say that the Iowa guards couldn't guard a paper bag. So we may have to revisit that clip if the Zags take on Iowa again.
Jalen Suggs had a great game, though. So it is the difference maker on that team, though. I mean, Iowa, obviously, they're great shooting guards. But they are just a little bit undersized. They're not the most athletic, and that's where a guy like Jalen Suggs was able to expose that. So if they can tighten up and play well, obviously it's been a long time since that matchup. It's a game changer for Iowa, and that's where we can see them make that deep run.
Well, this is the last time we will have to break down a hypothetical bracket.
Yep.
As we mentioned, we are now just 3 days away from Selection Sunday, so the next video we'll be doing will be the Monday after Selection Sunday, breaking down the actual Zags bracket. It feels so good. Just a year ago, we were shutting down everything, and to know that
can't wait.
We're going to get a tournament. We're going to get Zags basketball in March. It feels super good. Yep. And I'm just excited to break down a real bracket over one of these.
Oh, yeah.
But do make sure to go down in the comments. Let us know how you see this bracket breaking down, some teams you think the Zags might want to avoid as we get into March. And then on Monday, we'll be breaking it all down here on the show.